All right, everyone, welcome to today's video. Today we're going to be talking about the application for a Social Security card. So whether you have a newborn, maybe you got married, maybe you got divorced, maybe you're just changing your name, maybe you lost your card or it got stolen, and for whatever reason you need a new Social Security card, or new or replacement, some people refer to it as. All right, so this is the application for a Social Security card. The form number is formSS-5. So if you go to Google and you type in SS-5 or replacement Social Security card, this is going to be the first link, and I'll do that here now. So we're going to go to Google. We're going to type in SS-5, and you can see that this is the very first link. Depending on where you live, you might get different search results. There are some websites out there that people refer to as scams. They're not really scams, but they are very sneaky in what they do. I personally know people and have also dealt with people when I worked for Social Security who essentially got ripped off by this. And basically what they do is you pay a fee and they'll fill out this form for you. At the very top of the form, you could see it says applying for a Social Security card is free. For whatever reason, these sites exist and they do make money. The individual person that I know that got ripped off, it was like $40. All they did was complete this free form, and they mailed it to her. It was just literally this one page, right? This is the bottom of it. I'll go over it in a second. I mailed it to her. That was $40, and then she still had to take it to the Social Security office. The most I've ever seen is about $500. That was a family of like 5 or 6 that completed that, and unfortunately it was the same thing. They just mailed them the forms. All right. So the first 3 pages of this form is just basically instructions, the do's and the don'ts, what they take, what they don't take, all that. I'm basically going to cover all of this in the video today. Okay, so we'll scroll down here. We'll go over the form. It's 17 questions. It's fairly self-explanatory. The name that you want to be shown on the card, right? So if you're getting married and you're going from your maiden name to a married name, the name you want on the card is going to be your new married name. Your full name at birth, this would be your maiden name. So let's say your last name at birth was Smith, and then maybe you got married once before and got divorced. Your name at birth is still going to be Smith, and then you would still put your new name, whatever it's going to be. Your current Social Security number. You should only have one Social Security number your entire life. The entire purpose of your Social Security number is basically to keep track of your wages and the taxes that you've paid. That is the only reason why you have a Social Security number. As far as like credit scores and all that's other stuff after the fact, but really that is the primary purpose of a Social Security number. All right, where you were born, your date of birth, your citizenship status. This would be important if, let's say, you just became a naturalized citizen. I can make another video on that. If you'd like to see that, leave a comment down below. So if, let's say that you did go through the process of becoming a citizen, you're going to have your naturalization ceremony at USCIS, wherever that might be. There's probably a few different offices in your state. You'll get your certificate of naturalization. It's literally it almost looks like a diploma type of certificate. It's going to have your picture on it, some biographical data like your height, what color your eyes are, your hair, and all that jazz. It will say when you became a citizen. And your ethnicity. This is kind of voluntary, as you can see here. It's voluntary. You don't have to put this information if you don't want to. If you do put it, they will keep track of it. So if that's not something that you're into, avoid that question. Same thing with question 8. Whether you're male or female, realistically that should be filled out. Then a big question I get is, do I need to put my Social Security number? So it might make sense if like you're a parent filling out this form for your kid, but if you're an adult, even if you're in your 20s, you really don't need to put your parents' Social Security number, so you can just check unknown if you'd like. You would want to put your parents' names though. That does play a role or can play a role in a bunch of other ways that I can go over in another video. So if you, again, would like to see that as well, that's fine. Just leave a comment down below. Question 11, has the person listed in item 1, okay, has the person listed in item 1 or anyone acting on his or her behalf ever filed or received a Social Security number card before? Realistically, the answer to this is going to be yes. So if you already have a number and for whatever reason you are applying for a new card, so again, you lost it, it got stolen, you got married, you got divorced, you're changing your name, whatever the case may be, the majority of the time it's going to be yes. Name shown on your most recent Social Security card. Okay, so going back up here, right? Name at birth is going to be your maiden name or your original name, whatever it might be. Name shown on the card. So let's say that you have been married more than once and you got divorced. Then you're going to put maybe your previous marriage name down here, and then I think I skipped this part. This would be like any other aliases you might have had. So if you've been married, 3-4 times maybe, or maybe you legally change your name, whatever the case may be. If you were born William and now you legally change it to Bill, that's where you would do that or put that information. All right, enter any different date of birth if used on an earlier application. So this would be like if you had a discrepancy or maybe there was like a typo on your record or, so let's say you were born on November 1st and then previously for whatever reason, again, probably a typo, Social Security had your date of birth as the 2nd, right? Then you may want to put that. That's not that's not a huge detail. Today's date, your phone number, your mailing address. You make sure you want to put this correctly. So if it's a card like a first-time card, so maybe for a newborn or maybe you're new to the area or new to the country, your address on your application is important. But I would say if you have a new address for whatever reason, it's even more so important to make sure that the post office knows that you live at that address. If you're putting, I'm John Smith and I live at 1-2 Fake Street on the application, and that's where we mail it, but the post office does not know that you live at that address and your name's not at that mailbox, they may not deliver the card, okay? At which case, if they don't, they're going to send it back to, I believe on the East Coast, the main hub is going to be like Baltimore, Maryland, or maybe even Orlando, Florida. There's a couple of the card processing centers that I'm aware of. Then you're going to have to go through the entire process all over again, okay? So before you even apply for the Social Security card, I would write your name on like a piece of paper or something and tape it on the inside of that mailbox so that the post office knows that you're there. Or even if you see the mail carrier, let them know, hey, I'm expecting something from Social Security to come in the mail. Could you, if you can, please hand deliver it. That would be a perfect scenario. All right, and then you're going to sign it, whether it's yourself. If you're a natural or adoptive parent, and I'll break this down here in a little bit because I'm going to go over the policies as far as what you actually need to present to have your Social Security card application processed. If you're a parent, then you're going to sign this. As a parent, you still have to provide a proof of ID for yourself to show that you are the right person to apply for this. And then you'll also have to provide a form of credible ID for your kid. Even if your kid is like a baby, you still have to have a form of ID. And we're going to segue that into that here in just a second. If let's say you're a grandparent and you have custody of your grandkids, on top of your ID, on top of a type of ID that we'll cover here in a second, you'll also need like custody paperwork or guardianship paperwork from realistically the county courthouse or your local courthouse saying that this child is in your care. Your court paperwork has to be original or certified copy, so it can't just be a photocopy, right? The Social Security office is gonna check either the stamp on the paper to see if there's a seal present in the paper to make sure it's not a photocopy, because the Social Security office accepts no photocopies of any kind whatsoever. All right. So you have to have some sort of stamp on there. I don't know what other option there might be. I've never seen that before. So now we'll go into the policy as far as what's needed. For this policy, or for this screen here, all you need to do is go to Google, right? So we'll go back to Google and we'll type in this policy. And is RM space 10210.420, and it will come up, right? Priority list of evidence, acceptable evidence of identity. So we'll jump into this now. And it breaks it down by documents for children from birth to age 5. Then you could see age 6 through 17. And then obviously the last one is going to be for adults, 18 and older. All right, so first we'll start off as kids. And you can see that there's 2 columns here, if you're a U.S. citizen or if you are a non-citizen. For the purpose of today's video, I'm going to go over U.S. citizens. If you would like to see the non-citizen video on how to apply for a first-time card, whether you're a child or a family and you have children and adults that need to apply, or just maybe children, leave a like down in the comments, or I'm sorry, leave a comment down below and tell me what you'd like to see, or maybe your situation, and I will respond to the comments. All right, so primary evidence for any age group is pretty standard. It's basically asking if you have a state ID, a state driver's license, or maybe a valid passport. All right, any documents that you provide, as far as, again, an ID of any kind, they have to be valid. They cannot be expired. All right, and let me see here. So you can see unexpired U.S. valid state ID, non-driver's identity card, or a state driver's license, or U.S. passport, okay? Realistically, that's a no-brainer. So if you did have that, again, whether it's for yourself or for a child, just make sure to bring that with you to the Social Security office. And before I go any further, there's 3 different ways that you can apply for a Social Security card. You can do it in person at the office, you can do it by mail, or you can do it online. To do it online, you have to be an adult and you have to have a valid state ID. And the address on your ID has to match the address where you want it to be mailed. So the software that's used when you apply for a Social Security card online, to my knowledge, I'm not a tech person, but this is how it was explained to me, is that Social Security shares information with the DMV of the state that you're saying your driver's license is from. And so if you're applying for it online and you put in any other address besides what's on your ID, it's not going to go through. The purpose of that, before anybody, don't be upset if it doesn't work for you. The purpose of that is so that if somebody were to steal your wallet or your purse, or you were to lose it, they can't just go online and send your Social Security card to any address. It has to be the address that you live at, all right, or the address that's reflected on your ID, because that's what the DMV is going to have, realistically. All right, so that's the purpose of that. All right, so going into, again, these were the primary types of ID. Most 5-year-olds don't have any of these things. They might have a passport. I would say that's realistically the most, and that's rare that they do. But if you travel, maybe you have family abroad or you like to travel, whatever the case may be, that would be the instance where a child is going to have a passport. So secondary forms of ID. So when you don't have the things in the original box, this is what they're going to ask for. The first chunk of things, realistically, the overwhelming majority of people do not have, and then I'll touch base on what the majority do have, or what's easily accessible to make this as painless as possible. All right, and this would be the exact conversation that I would have with somebody when I worked for the Social Security office, and I would have done exactly this. So secondary forms of ID, when the primary form of ID is not readily available within 10 business days. So let's say you had a bunch of errands to run, a Social Security card was on your agenda for that day, and maybe you forgot your driver's license at home, and you told the Social Security office that you forgot your driver's license. They're going to tell you, okay, well, it's readily available within 10 business days, so go home, get it, and come back, right? And that's going to be a headache. So again, that's the purpose of this video, is to prevent multiple trips. I personally have dealt with people where it took 3-4 times of instruction, of the same instruction, and then printing it out and giving them all of this, for them to kind of say, okay, well, yeah, this is what I need. And unfortunately, it caused much frustration for them. But again, the purpose of the video, now you can replay whatever you need as often as you need to make sure that you have the required documents to get this card, and hopefully just one visit will do it. I would not recommend, I mentioned before that you could mail in your documents. That would be absolute worst case scenario, and I would highly recommend against that, because if you mail in your documents and you use, let's say, the postal service like USPS, don't ever do that, because they will lose your stuff, and then who knows how much money it's going to cost, and again, more frustration. And right, so if you can go into the office, take an hour out of your day, go into the office, I would say early in the morning maybe, and just get it done as soon as possible, or if you can, go online. It's probably the easiest way to do it. So getting into the secondary form of ID for 5 years old or younger, U.S. diplomatic passport, that's like a political passport almost. U.S. official passport, that would be like a military passport. U.S. military dependent identification card, this is for a dependent of a service member. Certificate of naturalization is when you get naturalized. Realistically, no kid is going to have this. Certificate of naturalization is for adults. Certificate of citizenship is what children are going to have. At least in my expertise, if you're becoming a citizen and you're a minor and your parent is getting naturalized, your parent will get the certificate of naturalization, and as a child, you get a certificate of citizenship. U.S. Indian tribal card. So for these things right here, 99.9% of people, you won't have this. 1% of people are going to have this, final adoption decree, right? So that's where you've been adopted. Realistically, the court paperwork is going to have who the adopting parents are, who maybe the previous parents were. Sometimes it doesn't, because would be kind of expunged, I guess is the word that gets used. It has to have the child's name and date of birth, or the names of the adopting parents, where it took place, and it has to be the final adoption has to be within the year of the time that you applied for a Social Security card, right? So if you come in January 1st, 2022, and you're saying, hey, I adopted this kid, I need a new name and a new number, et cetera, here's the court paperwork, and your adoption took place, let's say, January 1st of 2019, the adoption paperwork's too old, all right? And it goes by not the date that you got it from the court, your certified copy, because again, all documents have to be original, but the actual, I believe it says the final adoption decree, if the adoption took place, right? So the final adoption, so not necessarily when you were given the paperwork, but when the court said, okay, this is your kid now. All right. If it's greater than a year, then you need something else. All right. Probably the most readily available item is right here. This is what the overwhelming majority of people are going to use. Certified copy of medical record from the clinic, doctor, or hospital, an immunization record or letter providing extract data from the medical record showing the applicant's name and the applicant's date of birth or age. And it talks about clarification by custodian. So what this is basically saying is you can use your immunization record, which is probably the easiest thing to get for kids. And as long as it has their name, their date of birth, and it has a stamp from the doctor's office. So you'll go to the doctor's office, say, hey, I need a copy of the immunization record, and can you stamp it and put a signature on there? That is what's going to tell Social Security that this is an original document, meaning that you just didn't get it from the file cabinet at home and it's a few years old, right? That's what you need on really any sort of medical record, any one of these things that you get. Make sure it has the child's name and date of birth, and it's stamped and signed by the doctor's office, right? That will make your whole experience as painless as possible. And then let's see, if the issue date is 4 years old or more, then check the date of the child's last recorded shot. If the date of last record shot is less than 4 years old from the current date, then use that as the date issued, right? So it's basically saying, as you get immunizations, there'll be different dates on the paperwork. So just go off of whatever is the most recent shot date. All right. Health insurance card or Medicaid card showing the child's name, a photograph of the child, which is I've never seen a health insurance card with a photo of a child, or the child's age and date of birth. This is common. I would say the most common situation is has the kid's name and the parent's name. It has to it has to have the child's name, a photograph, which is rare, or the child's age or date of birth, or the parents' names. Okay? If it's missing one of these things, let's say it's a health insurance card with just the kid's name, that is not enough information for the Social Security Administration to provide a Social Security card for the child, and they'll request something else, and then it's going to revert right back to medical records. It's probably going to be the easiest thing. Touching base on the medical records, a lot of people, for especially like newborns, will try and come in with the hospital paperwork from when they had the baby. Overwhelming majority of the time, the hospital paperwork is either going to say baby boy or baby girl. This is not sufficient enough. Sometimes people will also come in with, I forget what the term is used, where it's basically like the handprint or the footprint on the certificate paper. That is just a novelty. It's a novelty, meaning it's like a gift or something for the parent. It's not really an official document. They're not going to recognize those things as well. Okay. A birth certificate is also not a form of ID. That is by probably the number one misconception of birth certificates is tons of parents will come in and say, okay, here's the application, here's my ID, and here's my child's birth certificate, thinking that should be enough. A birth certificate is proof of your age and where you were born, but not who you are. That's the easiest way to explain it. I could see why people would disagree with that. It is the way it is. A birth certificate just proves your age and who you are and what your name was when you were born, but it does not prove who you are. That's what this whole policy here is about, establishing your identity, right? So if you had frustration with the birth certificate, I'm sorry, but it is what it is. All right. And then where was I? Okay, so we're at the health insurance card. Next thing on the list, certified child care facility or other preschool or school record. It must be for the current or previous year. So if you're walking in with some pre-pandemic documents, they're not going to work. All right. The documents have to show the child's age or date of birth or the parents' names on top of obviously the child's name as well. Again, have to be stamped and signed by the preschool or child care facility, wherever they're from. There's a hyperlink here that kind of, I'm sure it dives into kind of the specifics a little bit more, but in a nutshell, the kids in preschool, try and get something with the kid's name and date of birth and then have them stamp and sign it. Religious record, so that could be a cradle roll, naming certificate, birth certificate, baptismal record, showing in addition to the child's name, the child's age or date of birth, or the parents' names. So again, if you got baptized, it'd have to have the child's name and date of birth or the parents' names is basically what it's saying. And then obviously with the baptismal certificate, it has to be an original and certified copy, so it can't be a photocopy that you brought in. Another thing is council report of birth abroad. An example of this is, let's say one or maybe both of your parents serve in the military and they're stationed in Germany or Japan or something like that. Mom gets pregnant and has you 9 months later. It's likely that you're probably going to have 2 or 3 different birth certificates. You're going to have a birth certificate from the country that you were born in, probably a birth certificate from whatever base that might have happened on, and then the counselor's report of birth abroad is issued by the State Department. The State Department is the same people that issue the passports. So this is basically like a special, birth certificate that shows that you were born outside the United States, but you are a U.S. citizen. Super important. Make sure you don't ever lose that document, especially if you're an older person like a baby boomer. That is critical. I can't stress that enough. Do not lose that document. All right. And then there's special instructions for case-by-case basis. I can go over that in another video if you'd like, but we'll press on here into the next age group, documents for age 6 through 17, all right? Realistically, all this primary proof is the same thing, either a state ID, a driver's license, or passport. In either scenario, it has to be valid. If you didn't have that, we're going into the secondary forms of evidence. Again, and the first bit is the same as the second bit: diplomatic passport, official passport, military identification, dependent identification card, certificate of naturalization or certificate of citizenship, Indian tribal card, adoption decree. I think we already touched base on that. It can't be, the adoption cannot have taken place more than a year ago. Again, if you did have the adoption decree, all documents must be original or certified. And you do have the option, I don't believe I mentioned in the first category, when you adopt a child, you have the option of requesting, and you would want to do this in court, of requesting a new name. And then also in court, you would want to make sure that your court documents also mention the idea of getting a new social security number if you want. So depending on the situation, a lot of the times when adoption occurs, it's because the biological parents maybe weren't ready for a child, maybe they were very young, or substance abuse issues, and the child was removed from the biological parents. In that particular case, especially the second one, when the biological parents aren't, we'll say, upstanding citizens or maybe even shady, you would want to change the social security number if they know what the original one is, because you don't want them later stealing the child's identity, opening up credit cards and bank accounts using all the old information. That can really jam up the child. So in your court paperwork, you'd want to make sure that either your adoption attorney or the judge knows that you are open to the idea of a new name and a new social security number, and then they'll put that in the adoption decree so that when you take it to Social Security, it's all right there, that you kind of know what's going on. When you go to apply for that, whether it's getting a replacement card because you weren't aware of the fact, or maybe you knew, a lot of the times the Social Security representative that's in front of you, they probably won't bring up, hey, do you want a new number? And the questions are there, especially once the parents' names get changed. That's another reason why, your parents' names on the application are important, right? Because we'll see when somebody gets adopted. When you request multiple Social Security cards through your life, right, whether there's a discrepancy or whatever the case, or everything was fine, you'll see what name was presented, the date of birth, where the person was born, mother and father's name, also the ethnicity and race questions if you did answer them, as well as when the card was issued, right? And realistically, they go in order from when you were born, you got your first Social Security card. Maybe, now you're a teenager, you're entering the workforce. Then maybe you moved out of mom and dad's house, you lost your card, you're getting a replacement one. Then maybe you got married, so you're changing your name, right? So each time you order a Social Security card, there's going to be a date there that shows when exactly you requested that change, okay? So when the technician is going through the questions and the parent's name changes, it should revert them back automatically to saying, did an adoption take place? Does this person want a new number, a new name, et cetera, et cetera? Unfortunately, there are, we'll say, lazy, for lack of a better word, we'll say there's lazy representatives that will just, there's a way to bypass that particular section, and they might not even bring it up, right? You can hand them the adoption decree, and they still won't even ask you if you want a different name or a different number, right? So just know that going into it. And back to our documents here. All right. Now going, the start of the change, I guess you could say, between birth and age 5 and then 6 through 17 is the medical records, right? So when you're in the category of 6 to 17, immunization no longer works, because based off of the age of the child, realistically, they might have had all their immunizations and enough time has probably passed, especially if you're, towards the end of that particular category and age. It probably has been a while, or more than that 4 years it mentioned before, since your last immunization. So this is what it says. Certified copy of medical records from clinic, doctor, or hospital, or letter providing extract data from the medical records showing, in addition to the applicant's name, the applicant's date of birth or age. Okay. And then it says down here, note, do not accept a receipt or a record of treatment recorded or maintained by the applicant or the applicant's family. This is basically old medical paperwork from your pediatrician that's been in mom's file cabinet forever. That's what that's talking about, okay? So again, when you go to the doctor, you get your paperwork, get it stamped and signed. If they'll put a date on there, that's great. And then it says, do not accept a record, okay. Do not accept immunization records from applicants age 6 through 17. Applicants age 6 through 17 should have one of the documents listed in this, right? So it's just basically kind of reverting back to itself, that there should be something here aside from immunization that is more readily available and more recent, right? They want the most recent documents possible. All right. So again, for medical records, this is going to be the easiest thing to get, whether you've been to the hospital, urgent care, or your doctor, your pediatrician, whatever the case may be. Just get something with your name, your date of birth, and have them stamp, sign it, and date it. Would be awesome. That would work. All right. Then health insurance card. That's the same as the last category. And then let's see. Health insurance card or U.S. Medicaid card is unacceptable as secondary proof of identity if it does not have a photo or biographical data. Again, I have processed thousands of Social Security cards in all different types of situations. I've never once seen a photograph of a kid on a health insurance card. So that's never going to be there. Biographical data would be like your date of birth or how old you are. All right. School identity card, certified school record, transcript, or report card must be for the current or prior year, and show in addition the child's name, either a photograph of the child or the child's date of birth or the parents' names. Realistically, you're going to get the current or previous school ID. It's going to have the picture of the kid on there and probably the kid's name. You should be good to go with that. If you were using the school ID card, the child must be present in the office, right? So that means that you can't do it by mail. And again, you can't, if you're under the age of 18, you can't get it up through Social Security's website. So you would have to go in person. Just, all offices in the nation open at 9 a.m. So they'll probably miss a little bit of school. Hopefully, you're in and out. You'll get a receipt that day that says that you applied for the card. In no circumstance when you apply for a Social Security card will you get anything that day. There's other things depending on the situation and the times that the office might be able to give out. But if there's nothing going on, especially right now, the pandemic is over. So you're going to apply for the card in any given situation. It doesn't matter if you're a citizen, non-citizen, whether you're a newborn or an 80-year-old man, whether it's a new or replacement card. You will get a receipt with your name and address on it saying that you applied for the card, and the card's going to take 7 to 10 business days to get to you. That's it. All right. Again, if you're using the school ID, kid has to be there. If you're using like a report card, I would say more than likely the report card's not going to have the child. It may have the child's date of birth on it. Just get something, child's name, date of birth from the school, and have them stamp or sign it, and you should be good to go. New things on here are going to be, or new thing is going to be life insurance policy for the child, showing the child's name, age, or date of birth, and then going back to the religious record again. If you're baptized, baptismal certificate needs to have name, date of birth, or any other sort of religious certificate. Again, case-by-case basis. If you want a case-by-case situation, comment down below on maybe what your situation is, and then I will reply to it. So if I can help, I'll let you know what you need. Or if you want to see a video on something else as well, or more elaboration, let me know. Documents for 18 or older. So these are adults. So if you're 22 years old and your mom's calling in about what to do for a Social Security card for you, you need to do everything yourself. Again, I say that because you're legally an adult at that point, so there's really not much that a parent can do for you if you're a kind of a young adult. Maybe you're in school, or you're at work, whatever the case may be. You have to fill out the application, you have to sign it, and you have to provide your ID. I've seen in the past, even for young adults, where mom's like, well, that's my child, I'm their mother, I have the birth certificate, no, I'm sorry, that's not enough. The actual person, if they're an adult, has to do it. There's no ifs, ands, whats, or buts. Again, same documents state-issued ID, driver's license or passport. Same group of stuff here as well for secondary. And then as we get into it, you can see here, U.S. Indian travel card, that's the same. U.S. government employee identification card, U.S. government identification or document issued by the employing agency. So if maybe you work for the DOD or your contractor or something like that, and you have that government card, I believe that's what this is referring to. You can use that. Realistically, if you have that thing, you would have submitted a driver's license to get that ID. Hopefully you still have it. It says here, marriage document. The only time that we can use solely a marriage document is when you're changing your name for marriage. So let's say that you got married and you want to update your name. All you have to do is provide the application, an original or a certified copy of your marriage certificate. That's it. And to clarify on that, there is a difference between marriage certificates and marriage license. A marriage license is what you would have initially filled out when you wanted to get married. Then you had to wait that time frame. Depending on where you live and what county, sometimes everything is on the same piece of paper and sometimes it's not. I have had occasions in the past where people, because it was on a separate piece of paper, brought in a marriage license applying to get married, and it has the date that they applied, but not the date that everything was notarized and finalized and then filed with the court. Okay, so when you're going through your documents, just take a look at it. There should be a big section. It's probably the first section is going to be your marriage license, right? You fill that out. You would give it to the court. Wait your 72 hours. Make sure you're not cousins or whatever. The due process. I forget what they call it. And then after that time frame, you get it notarized, and that's when you're officially married. So you need your marriage certificate. Again, it has to be an original or a certified copy of your marriage certificate. It can't be anything other than that. And then in that instance, solely to just update your last name, and it's your last name only, it's not your first name. So if you were born, let's say Kimberly, but you went by Kim your whole life and you wanted Kim on your social security card, your marriage certificate is only going to update your last name, not your first name. So you might have a technician at Social Security that does that for you. I can assure you that that is going to eventually catch up to you and cause a much bigger headache through the DMV, because at some point you'll have to update your driver's license, and they'll ask you, hey, Kim is on your Social Security card, but we see on your birth certificate your name is Kimberly. Did you ever legally change your name, your first name, in a court of law, right, through the county, with a name change order, changing your first name from Kimberly to Kim? You're going to tell them no, and they're going to say, you got to go back to Social Security and change your name before we give you a new ID. So long story short, whatever your first name is on your birth certificate should remain your first name legally on paper. As a nickname, go by whatever you want. But on your driver's license, on your Social Security card, on your birth certificate, all three names need to match, or all three things need to match with the same name. Also, when you get a job, you fill out your W-2 for work. You want to make sure that your name is also the same on that it would be on your Social Security card, so that you don't have an issue with when you file your taxes. I've seen before when people go to file their taxes and that their name is William, they put Bill on their W-2, and it creates an issue with that. Or even if the IRS does accept your tax return, maybe that information doesn't come over for Social Security. Then 20 years goes by, or 10, 15 years, maybe something happens, you become disabled, and now we don't have all of your wage history, or Social Security doesn't have all your wage history to give you all the credit. And now you're getting paid a lesser benefit while you search through all your documents. Maybe you have them, maybe you don't, to update your tax records with Social Security to have a higher payment, basically, or even later in retirement. Again, if you want to know more about that, please comment below. I'll make a video about that. All right, so then moving on, the rest of this, again, doctor's information. If you're in that situation where, let's say you're an older person, maybe you're 25, 30, 35, 40 years old, you're in between jobs, you lost your wallet, you lost your Social Security card, now you need a new driver's license. To get a new driver's license, you need a new Social Security card. What do? At that point, I would say that, again, beating that dead horse, your medical records is going to be your best bet. Okay, you're going to want to go to either the urgent care, the hospital, or your doctor's office, wherever you went maybe a couple years ago, get some medical record information, your name, your date of birth, make sure it's stamped and signed. Then go to the Social Security office, you'll get your Social Security card. It's going to take 7 to 10 business days. Realistically, the fastest it will come is about a week. Then once you have your Social Security card, you go to the DMV, you get your ID. When you get your ID at the DMV, you also need to, look up your local DMV for what you need to provide them. Usually it's a couple things with an address and your name on it, like a utility bill or something like that to show where you live or prove where you live on top of your birth certificate. And again, if you're married, your name change documents like your marriage certificate, things like that, for your ID. All right. Again, going over the health insurance card, school year. If you're a younger adult, then yeah, you might be in school. Again, if you're an older adult, maybe you're in school, maybe not. If not, again, your medical records is going to be the majority of the time. That's the most readily available and easiest thing to get is medical records. Almost like a one-stop shop. All right, and then the school records is it's the same thing. It must be for the current or previous year. Have your name, your date of birth, and be stamped or signed. An adult applicant should be able to obtain one of these documents for the current school year. This is a hyperlink to a more detailed policy or a life insurance policy showing his or her age or date of birth along with their name. And again, it has to be original certified copy. All right. I hope that this video was able to help you and certainly smooths out your trip to the Social Security office, or if you're trying to do it online, make sure you register for an account at myssa.gov. That will make it tremendously easier for you. Minors cannot do that. So again, if you're under the age of 18, you cannot apply for a replacement Social Security card online. You'll have to either mail it, depending on what documents you plan on providing, or you have to go there in person. Me personally, I would take the time out of the day to prevent any other issues and go to the Social Security office. A lot of people used to ask me, well, when's a good time to go to the Social Security office? Because it's an office that serves the public, no matter where you go, any Social Security office serves the public. There's no perfect time, right? It could be every office opens at 9 a.m. There could be a line at the door. Maybe there's not. It's kind of random. Realistically, you want to be there in the morning because that first morning shuffle, a lot of those people, those initial people, are going to get out of there relatively fast because there's already no wait, right? So if you're the first or the second wave of people coming in, I would say your trip is maybe going to last 45 minutes. So this video will help you get in and out, get your replacement card as quickly as possible without any back and forth. I have seen people in the past where it seems like they spend the entire day going back and forth of the week, and it's usually because they're in a rush and maybe they don't hear a certain detail or forget something, or there's a number of different things. But if you follow this video, it will be as quick and as painless as possible, and I hope it helps. Again, please subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this. Like the video, as it helps the algorithm and will push the video out to more people who are trying to look for the same help that you're looking for. And comment down below if you'd like to see anything else. Thank you. Have a good day.